To be here tonight. I am with Julie-Ann Lee. I know most of you guys know who she is, so you're going to be just as excited as I am. I always am when we're talking with her. She's just such a just amazing energy and knowledge that she's going to be sharing with us tonight. We're going to be talking about the Thriving Pet Expo and why we think you should come. We're going to go over what Julie-Ann's going to be teaching you live and in person. She's also going to be able to answer some of your questions. So if you have questions, I know this is running through Saving Pets. It's running through Thriving. We've got a whole, it's Thriving Pet Expo. It's running through the Saving Pets. It's running through the Spaw. So all of you guys probably have heard of the Adored Beast, which is Julie-Ann's baby, and has just recently, I have a kitty that was semi-abandoned with me, and he's got kidney failure. And the owner, it's a long story. Bottom line is he gets a little bit of diarrhea, and I just give him one of your products, and now I've got him on it constantly, and we've been able to rid it. Which is what I love about your product so much, is that I know it works. I've seen it work on my own animals. I've seen it work on all of my clients' animals, and that's why I love it so much. But I don't want to take up, I want you to talk. So Julie-Ann, tell us, before we went live, Julie-Ann and I were talking about how these clinics, that she used to run these veterinary clinics in Canada, Nova Scotia area. And it's just such an interesting, fascinating story. So I'm going to let her share that with you so you guys have a better idea. You'll notice next to Julie-Ann Lee's name, it says DCH, and sometimes that confuses people. So I'm going to let Julie-Ann explain a little bit about these clinics that she ran and what that means, because in the U.S. we don't really know. So go for it.
Okay, well, it's not just the U.S. It's kind of a complicated story. So it's long, but DCH is Doctor of Classical Homeopathy. And I don't have RCH home. I've got a few things kicking around, a few degrees kicking around, and the reason that I chose all the time to work with the homeopathic part of it is because I did a program in England with the British Homeopathic Veterinary Surgeons program.
Oh.
So I did a 4-year human homeopathic medicine program in BC. And then I went to England and did 3 years with the British Homeopathic Veterinary Surgeons. And then prior to that, I was a vet tech. So I went from a vet tech to doing human medicine to going to England and then doing with the British Homeopathic Veterinary Surgeons. And then I came back and opened the first licensed holistic veterinary clinic in Canada, which was in Vancouver. And during that 25 years, I owned and ran, I owned 4. And then I did a huge clinic, 24-hour clinic that I opened a holistic wing in. Wow. And then I also taught a 4-year postgraduate holistic veterinary medicine program that we held at UBC. So, but it was very interesting because I'm in a little bit of a unique situation. And when you said our products work, the products came from me trial and error of working with animals at the clinic, right? Like opening this holistic clinic, which was like in 1994. And so they've been used on thousands of animals and clinically. And I know how they work on pretty much everything. So they're not just a product that's just, someone's got a good idea to make a supplement or a probiotic, right, or whatever, right, and they put them out there. These come from years and years and years of clinical practice. So, so the clinics that I had, I opened one, and I opened it with Dr. Dave Roosh, and we were told we had to close it down because it wasn't, we wanted to just be a referral holistic clinic. We didn't want to have surgeries or anything like that. We just wanted vets to refer to us. So they said we couldn't. And I said, okay, well, what do we have to do? He said, you have to open up a licensed clinic. And I said, well, okay, well, let's do it. So I personally owned these clinics myself. And because of what happened, I was able to do everything at the clinic. So I was able to, look at animals and do exams and work with medications and do all this stuff, and then write out the plan of everything that I felt like needed to be done. and then I would go to whatever vet that I had hired for that clinic as the designated vet. And I worked with one vet for many, many, almost 20 years. He was the smartest vet I've ever worked with in my whole life. He was so incredible. And he would just look at my ideas and what I felt and what I thought. And if he agreed with it, he would just sign off on it and say okay. And the only reason that I was allowed to do what I did do was because we went to court with the vet association, and we wound up finding a balance of what the association would allow me to do and what I wanted to do, right? So we worked
Right.
together as as the association and my clinic to to narrow out what was in my scope, what wasn't in my scope. And at the end of the day, it was so cool because the vet that I worked with was learning more and more and more about holistic medicine and teaching me more and more. Like the two of us together started doing microdosing of drugs. And that
Wow.
was in 97.
Wow.
Microdosing thyroid medication, microdosing prednisone, microdosing like so many different things. And it was just so empowering for me to be able to navigate through all that and have such a supportive veterinarian that believed in me so much and saw not just me but saw the results, right? And was just then fully on board. And then we just hired more vets and more technicians and more homeopaths and more nutritionists till finally I had one of the biggest veterinary practices in Canada.
Wow.
And we had everything from a physio rehab center, chiropractors, acupuncturists, rehab tubs, full surgery, ultrasounds, like you name it. It was like we had everything. And it was the most incredible thing to see veterinarians and non-veterinarians like human chiropractors or human traditional Chinese medicine doctors or whatever working together as a team for the higher good of these animals. Like it was mind blowing. We had wait lists for 5 and 6 months because we had people flying their animals in from Sweden to come see us. So, and I have to say, it was because there was no ego, right? There was
Yep.
zero ego. If I had an opinion, and even if it was a conventional opinion, but from based on my knowledge or based on my experience, there was no like, oh, well, you're not a conventional vet, so we don't listen to you. Or if they came to me, not being, 7 years of homeopathy, and said, oh, you know what? I tried X, Y, and Z on this patient and it worked amazing. Do you think we could do this? I'd be like, that's amazing. Like it's not like, well, you didn't go to school for 7 years to become a homeopath like I did. So no, you can't use it. We were such a great team. And, this one clinic that I opened, the holistic wing, it was 24 hours. There was 13 vets there and 24 hours. So there was a staff of 37.
Wow.
And we just worked like clockwork together. It was incredible. It was the most amazing, amazing. And I'm praying that that's going to happen again because I feel like, vets are so stressed and I feel so incredibly bad for vets because it is a really tough time right now for them. If they could just embrace other other practitioners like
Yeah.
herbalists or nutritionists or whatever to lighten the load, to just lighten the load and create this incredible space that I know for a fact can happen because I
Yeah.
had many clinics, right?
I was talking to an attorney one time who is working on like he does a lot of veterinary malpractice
Yep.
cases, which he doesn't make any money off of, but it does exist. And what he found interesting, he says, when lawyers have hard cases, we contact other lawyers and we have no problem. But he said it's very unique in the veterinary world that they don't want to do that. And the ego is exactly what's going on. Is I don't really understand it because it in every other aspect you see people using each other's knowledge and the time they've had and questioning it, but for some reason in the veterinary world we get a lot of ego and I know best. They don't even want to listen to their own clients who know the animal, and they kind of
Yeah.
poo-poo what they're saying and they pass it around. It's awful. It's just awful.
I think a lot of that unfortunately comes from their stress levels. Like I feel like it's had such a shift where it for whatever reason now, it's one of the most stressful jobs, right, to
Sure.
be in. I mean, I think it's got the highest suicide rate, which is just
Yep.
heartbreaking. And I think, I don't know, but all I know are the vets that I've worked with, like personally worked with, have been incredible. And I feel like, I just want to take their DNA and their hearts and their minds and their soul, like all the vets that are speaking at the conference, right?
Yeah.
They're just like such
Amazing.
incredible vets, and they're so like I'm gonna use this word, but I don't really mean it in that, in some ways that people might take it. But they have this like spiritual attachment as well to to their career and to their patients and to their, like, it's much bigger than, seeing an animal every 15 minutes. I think what's happened is vets have been jammed into a very, very failing human protocol, right? Where you go and see your doctor, you've got 15 minutes, they don't even hardly recognize who you are, let alone take a look at your chart and go through to have the time, right? Because they're so there's so much pressure on them to see so many patients within such a small period of time that I just think the stress levels are getting to them, like I don't know. I just feel like it's turned a weird corner,
Yeah.
where and it's really sad because at least a patient can walk in and say, "Oh, you gave me that drug, and oh my gosh, I felt so much worse," or
Right.
"Oh my gosh, I felt so much better," or "I felt better, but my stomach hurt here."
Yeah.
Whereas, in 15 minutes, you can get a lot more information from a human than you can from an animal. So shortening that down and having that workload has got to be really hard on them. And so I think that, it's just veered off in a direction that, I don't think anybody wanted it to go in. But
Right.
I'm really, really hoping that it's going to, I don't know, I don't want to say self-destruct, but almost
Sometimes.
where it's going to get to a point where, if you can't get in to see your vet for, and it's an emergency, or even like, may not be emergency that they're bleeding to death, but it needs to be seen and you can't get in for 3 weeks.
Yeah. No,
Something has
it does.
to
It
shift.
does. Something does have to happen. I think it's happening. I do really believe it's happening, and I hate to,
Yeah,
because I mean, we do. We have veterinarians that are committing suicide. Like something is
horrible.
shifting. It's happening, and it hopefully, we aren't going to have any more suicides. It's not just the vets. It's the vet techs, and it's just
It's the
this.
whole industry.
Yeah, it's just
It's
it's
really
overwhelming. But to
stressed.
your point, when you say, I really wish I saw on, I think it was on Saving Pets, somebody wrote, why would you ask Facebook instead of having your vet seen by, or having your dog seen by a vet? And one of our moderators responded with, because you can't get into your vet, because the vet can't help me with this, because I'm in this situation because of the medications that vet gave me. and and then vets get angry that people like me, or vet techs that are trying to help people. But I wish they would open up and be more understanding and work with us, like you're saying, because we can
Yeah.
take some of the burden off, we can take some of the stuff off. And pet owners, one of the reasons we want to do the Thriving Pet Expo, and one of the reasons why I am on Saving Pets doing this, and one of the reasons why you have your Facebook group, is to try to take some of that off and to teach people how to recognize things on their own, right? And because you have to, because
Well,
if
I
you
think that
don't.
I think what should probably, or not should, would be really great to happen is that, like in the human community, you can go and see a naturopath,
Yeah.
right? You can, And I know that, a child isn't the same as a dog, and you really do need to understand physiology, pathology, um, everything. But at the same time too, like, children, babies can't talk. The mothers have to talk for them,
Right.
and I think that there's this really beautiful way that everybody can work together. I used to always say, even back in the day when I had all my clinics, there's enough sick people and sick animals to go around for everybody. It does not have to be competitive,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the more people can work together, the more it raises that vibration of everybody. Like, it just becomes this really great synergistic process where,
Yes.
I
Amazing.
know about, whatever bacteria, and I know about homeopathy, and I know about microdosing because I was doing it for 25 years. you know that piece is worth it, like,
Yeah.
to a vet, and vice versa. Like, we all have something to bring to the table, like huge amounts to bring to the table. And
Right.
it doesn't really matter about your, I shouldn't say about your education, but it's more about your experience, and bringing your experience to the table and to be heard.
Yeah.
And I did a really cool thing that could never be done now, and it's so sad. We would have really difficult cases, right? Because we were a holistic clinic, and people would bring animals to us from all over for second, third, fourth, fifth opinions, before they were euthanized or whatever. And if there were really, really tough ones, I would say to the person, we do this thing called a round table, and all the vets, right? And even some of the techs,
Awesome.
and all of us will sit down for 1 hour and go over your animal's case. But it was really expensive. Like, it
Right.
was really expensive. I don't even know how much it was. I can't even remember now.
Right.
But you can imagine 6 veterinarians, technicians, chiropractors, whatever, sitting down and having all of these, sometimes 10 over 10 people
Yeah,
sitting
but
and
imagine how much better
looking,
that is than making an appointment with all six of those people. The time that is
or
wasted.
even like the amount of time that we didn't have to do surgery, or
Yeah.
didn't have to do chemotherapy, or didn't have to do, or we were able to really be like, okay, here's the plan. Here's the high level plan for this animal. And people had no problems, believe it or not. People had no problems even back then spending $2,000, $2,500 to do this roundtable, because we
Wow.
got so much out of it. You can't do a surgery for $2,500. You can't
Yeah.
even, hardly do a dental for $2,500.
Right.
So, to get all of these eyeballs of these people that had all kinds of incredible things to share, you would just wouldn't believe what we got from it. Like,
Wow.
like,
I bet.
just, it was unbelievable.
I bet. I bet for everybody, the knowledge you guys gain from communicating, the knowledge the pet owners, what I bet.
Everybody,
It's how it should always
everybody.
be. It should
But
always, they should always
can you
have round
imagine?
tables.
Can you imagine even having that now, when they don't even have enough time to breathe. They don't have enough time to have their lunch. They don't have enough time. Like, they're worked so hard
You
that
know?
it's just, they can't even use their own brilliance, right? Like, they can't even use their own brilliance because
Right.
they're so stressed, and they're so pushed, and they're so, behind the eight ball all the time, right?
Right. Right. Right.
I feel really bad for them. I think it's I just don't know, and I always hope that there's a way. I used to say to my clients, you know, if you're going to your vet, because we would have lots and lots of clients that would come to us and still go see their regular vets, and we
Yeah.
would just liaison between them and things like that. And then we had some that, you know, only came to us, but whatever. But a lot of times, if we were working with an animal in Japan or Sweden or whatever, obviously they're still using their veterinarian, or Dubai, or whatever in the world. And it was just like, I don't know. It's just this great process of being able to communicate, and only have one focus, and that focus is what's the best for this animal, and how
Right.
you're just really focused, and even energetically that makes such a incredible difference. But I'm hoping one day maybe it's going to get back to that. I
Me
don't
too.
know.
Me too. Me too. I do. We'll do a couple of questions here. So Deanna wants to know, do you think that any of the holistic vets, I know that Dr. Becker spends some time working with the universities, but are there any, she wants to know, are any of you guys speaking out to the universities so that we can try to get some of these younger vets to kind of come on board a little bit with it? What do you know about that?
In the US, I don't know. Yeah, I do think that Dr. Becker does do that. I don't know which one, but
Yeah.
I've lectured at PI University, Veterinary University, a few
Oh, good.
times.
Good.
And I it was really cool. I did a whole thing for something called the Sprott College in Vancouver, which brought in veterinarians in their last year from different countries to teach stuff. So I
Wow.
taught holistic medicine through that. And I think that more and more. I mean, I know that Penn State, I don't know if they're teaching their vets. I don't know if they're teaching vets this, but I know that Penn State's doing tons and tons of research on medicinal mushrooms, like
Yeah.
tons of it. Yeah. And more holistic approaches and stuff.
We'll get
So
there
I
slowly.
think, yeah, I do. I think the big way to do it is, um, I used to, that's what I was going to say. What I would say is that what vets don't often hear is, I will pay you for your time. Meaning, like it's just for me, you go to a lawyer and you know that you're paying X amount of dollars for
Per
their
hour.
time,
Right.
for them to give you information,
Right.
right? And you don't leave with a bag of dog food, you don't leave with a bag of groceries, you don't leave with a bunch of drugs, you don't leave, like, you don't, it's not that. You walk
It's
in
the time.
knowing that it's your time, and that time is important and
Yeah.
really well respected, right?
We need to
and
get
i
on.
and i I think that's a really important piece, is to go in and say, I don't have to leave with a prescription, I don't have to leave with anything. What I really want to leave with is information. And I'll
Yeah.
come back and I'll spend another X amount of dollars for your 15 minutes or 20 minutes of time to get more information, so that at the end of the day, I can make an informed decision, that I don't feel rushed, that I feel like I really have this information about my animal.
I've often told my clients to schedule 2 appointments back to back and tell them what you're
If they
doing
let you.
if they let you. But if you tell them, listen, I have a lot of questions, so I want to pay you for 2 appointments. Please
Yep.
book me for 2 appointments. So you can feel a little bit more free to ask those questions that you want to ask. So, and that works for some people. But you also have to have the right veterinarian who's giving you proper information. But hopefully that will work for some of you. But you're right. I mean, I actually don't think that veterinarians should be selling drugs. I think it should be a prescription that you get at Walgreens like we do with us, because I feel like there's too much. It's right here, it's on the shelf, it's quicker, here you go, and you get to leave with something. So I think there's a conflict of interest there that needs to be addressed somehow. But I also know sometimes it's so much more convenient, it's harder, sometimes your pet needs it right away. I get that. So it's not a cut and dry. I'm not saying it's an easy answer, but I do think it needs to be addressed somehow.
Mhm.
Because right now I think a lot of drugs are sold that shouldn't be given to animals, that are, it happens to be on the shelf, it's the one they happen to be selling. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right one for your animal, it's just the one they have. So it becomes kind of a little bit of a conflict of interest there. So I want to address, just so you guys know, sometimes if I don't say your name, it's because it comes up only for us that says Facebook user. So if you want me to know who we're addressing, just put your name at the end or the front or something. But this is a really interesting question. I'm interested in what you have to say about this. She's really nervous about getting her dog in heat spayed, because she's not sure if it's safe to have them spayed. What are your thoughts on that?
When she's in heat, if she can keep
Sure.
her safe, without getting pregnant, um she can have her spayed right after she comes out of her heat.
Yeah,
It's
she's wondering.
definitely more complicated.
Yeah.
The whole uterus is more engorged. There's, the whole amount um of hormones that are circulating in the body for healing after. It's definitely a bigger surgery. a more
Yeah.
complicated surgery and harder on the dog when they're in heat.
Yeah.
And if there's no concern about you know if there's not some other kind of medical reason that she needs to have it done like immediately, then I would, if it was my dog, I would be choosing to wait till she came out of heat and just making 100 million% sure that she's not getting pregnant. And if she's worried about her having a pyometra, maybe that's why she's doing it, so that she doesn't have the risk of getting a pyometra after. Then she would just have to do it pretty, like, fairly quickly
Right
after she
after.
comes out of heat.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's funny because back when I was a tech, we spayed in dogs all the time that were in heat, like as if it was no big deal. And now I look at it and I think, God, it's stressful to get spayed no matter what. And then the stress of being in heat, your animal is the body is changing, and there's
Yeah.
stress while your dog is in heat. So now you just kind of like compile it on top of compile it. But conventional veterinarians and even some holistic vets say, oh, it's fine, it should be fine. But I agree with you. I think
Well, it
waiting.
should be fine. I mean, if you're a good surgeon and stuff, I just think it's harder on them, and it's
Right.
more. I mean, I've been in surgery with many of them that have been in heat, and it's definitely everything's more engorged and more difficult to tie off, and it you know. But a mature spay is not that easy. I shouldn't say
Yeah.
not that easy. Spays aren't
Right.
difficult.
I just want
Thinking
to
for your
help
dog is
her a
harder.
little. So she has to do it because it's through a breeder situation, or she adopted it, and
Um,
she has to do it on their schedule. Um, I hope this helps you a little bit. I have done and been involved in, and probably Julianne way more than me, tons and tons and tons and tons of spays while animals were in heat, and I've never had we've never had an animal die
no.
like that. So I don't want
Mm-mm.
you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. So I want to take that stress off you a little bit. I've never seen a dog have a reaction because they were in heat. So I hope that helps you, given the fact that you have no choice. It sounds like. What about you, Julianne? I mean, I've never.
No. No. They, it's just, they're the older they are, but this isn't helping her, right? Like, she's in a situation where like you said, she's adopted something.
Yeah.
It's in her contract that she needs to be spayed. If it's the only time she can get in to be spayed, and it's a contract, then just be aftercare, right? Just be way, 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 way more conscientious about aftercare.
Yeah.
Make sure that she's comfortable, make sure that she has enough pain meds, make sure that, if she's doing anything holistic, Arnica is amazing post surgery, Bellus perennis is amazing post surgery to help them recover easier. Just more tender, loving care after,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then I would say even leading up to it, keeping her stress levels down so that she's not stressed, and then trying to bring it down. So I would say, leading up to it, also keep her calm, keep her, preparing her for it, making sure she's eating healthy, making sure all of that stuff, preparing her for going in. But yeah, I mean, as much as it's ideal, like Julianne saying, it's ideal to wait, but if you can't wait, you're not at any risk of her dying or anything like that. That's not something that I would worry about. I've seen so many of dogs. There was even a few, you'd open them up. We didn't even know they were in heat right away. Like, cause everything's just starting to swell. And so we didn't even know till we opened them that, oh, wow, she's going into heat. But it was more complicated. So, well, let's talk a little bit about the Thriving Pet Expo. I know a lot of you guys are, probably just learning about this for the first time, but we have lots of speakers coming out. Julianne is going to be one of our speakers. And you had said something earlier about the connections that you make with people when you're discussing, like when you guys would do the roundtable and that discussion and being in that room and discussing. That's what the Thriving Pet Expo is about, is that connections that you make with people, not through Zoom, not through there. It's just different, right? And so being there and being in the room with like-minded people and learning all the stuff that we're going to be teaching people. So tell us a little bit about your topic. We're super excited. Um,
Yeah, well, it's about ancestral probiotics, right? So I've been working with the microbiome and bacteria for probably 26 years.
Wow.
And I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled about how, uh, probiotics and the gut microbiome and everything is becoming really, really mainstream and lots of research going into it. Uh, and it hasn't been very long. I think I've told you this story
Yeah.
where I used to write an article for the Vancouver Sun and a column for the Vancouver Sun. And one column that I did was talking about how good probiotics are for your dogs and cats. And the vet association made me retract my statement and because there was no proof that probiotics were beneficial at all for dogs and cats. And I think this was 2005, maybe
Wow.
2005, 2006. So we've come a long way since that, and I had to retract my statement and basically say, this has just been my experience using them in my clinic and whatever. And um and so when we look at that, it's amazing, right? So I just feel like I always say that when I first opened my vet clinic, people thought I flew in on a broom, right? Like I was talking about doing titer tests instead of vaccinating, and doing, raw food diets and using homeopathy instead of antibiotics. And, it
Right.
was like, oh my gosh, who is this person? Um, and now I think we're bombarded with information, but I always say we're bombarded with information, but we're starving for understanding,
Oh my
right?
gosh, exactly.
We hear and we see and we're downloading all of this data, but there's this disconnect between the information and what's happening, right? And when we're talking about being in the more holistic realm, um, we tend to really lose sight of what all this is coming from, which is nature, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we tend to pick up a bottle and go, oh, this is a great supplement, or oh, this is a great probiotic, or oh, this is a great this, or oh, this is a great that. And we have this disconnect about where did it actually come from, and 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 where did that plant, or where did that tree, or where did that bacteria, or where did it originate, and what was it doing, and how did it how did it blend with the whole way that the world or the planet or whatever creates its own homeostasis. And how does it, it's an education, it's wisdom. I really feel that bacteria have a ton of, well, they're brilliant. Bacteria is one of the smartest things on the planet. Like, and when we're looking at everything that we're doing, is like, what's it grown in? Is it grown in soil that is completely void of wisdom, is completely void of bacteria, is it completely void of even topsoil? It's predominantly dirt with chemical fertilizers in it, and it just doesn't even have the ability to feed ourselves and educate ourselves in our microbiome, and not just our microbiome, but actually our cells, our mitochondria, everything. um, it lacks that ability to even be able to function like it would be functioning in the wild. So what I've started doing in the last 5 years is really digging into, you know, looking backwards to go forward. Like, what was happening 100 years ago? What was happening 200 years ago? When we think about our dogs and cats, they weren't uh it hasn't been that long that they've been eating dog food and seeing veterinarians. It's not like it's been
Right.
thousands and thousands of years, right?
Right.
It's been a very short time. I mean, even it shows my age, but I grew up in a time when a lot of dogs and cats weren't spayed and neutered, weren't vaccinated, we're running around having sex and fighting and hunting and doing whatever. And when we look at statistically, the longevity of pets, you would think we would be doing better, right? With all of our science and all of our, great inventions and everything, and we're not. Dogs and cats are dying of cancer left, right, and center. They're diagnosed with their first chronic disease at a year of age. They're not living to the life expectancy that they should be living, or that they were even living in like the 60s.
Yep.
So I just kept thinking, like, something's like what's going on. And I'm a huge planet and environmental nerd. And I have a medicinal mushroom forest, and I spend a lot of time in this forest. And looking and researching medicinal mushrooms and how do they grow and what makes them thrive and what makes them die and what makes them, like, just understanding the forest beds and like, I compare the forest bed to a gut, right? Like, it's so diverse and it's so full of bacteria, and it's feeding all of these plants, and it's feeding the mushrooms, and it's feeding the decayed logs and blah 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 blah. So I'm like, okay, let's go back. I want to go back, and I want to understand even more. Like, Adored Beast is all about the planet. Like, it always has been. I would never purchase an ingredient to make my formula unless I dug into where it was coming from so anally that I knew, even from a perspective of how do they use their water? Do they recycle their water? Do they do this? Do they do that? How, they chopping down rainforests to, like, it's just an oxymoron for me for something to suffer or die, no matter what animal or bird or reptile or fish that it is, in order to, or suffer or die in order to help our companion pets. I energetically, I and this isn't speaking against anybody or anything, but from my perspective, energetically, it's an oxymoron. It doesn't fit energetically from a perspective of how I look at healing. So everything that I use and everything that I work with, I need to know that it's going to have the energy. It's come from something with that energy, that it's supporting the planet, right? And not just our companion animals. And I feel like that is a very, like, it can't be any different. That's just the way the company runs, and that's all there is to it. So stepping back, I started looking. I've been doing lots on probiotics for a long, long time, and I put out a wolf strain, right? So
Right.
one of my probiotics is made from the feces of a very, very, very old wolf pack in Canada. And old meaning like they've been around for a really long time. And and it's just fascinating to me to understand, like, the fingerprint, like the resilience that a wolf has, right? In
Right.
compar in comparison to the resilience of a dog.
Sure.
Like, we're talking about spaying and neutering. These wolves are 100 plus pounds, and they're having babies when they're 10 years old and living till they're 15, 16, and they have way more stress than our dogs have from a perspective of
Survival.
survival.
Yeah.
But they
Survival.
don't have the same stress as what our companion dogs have from an emotional and suppressive nature, right?
Yeah.
So the lecture is going to be on, how did I navigate this? What have I seen? Why did I do it? How did I do it? Um, how do we produce the products? How do we, and then I put out 2 functional prebiotics. I've been doing research on prebiotics for a really, really long time as well, because I don't like using anything that's not functional. I don't want to put anything in my body or my pet's body or my animal family or family's bodies that isn't something functional, right? That's why we don't use fillers and all that stuff. But I also don't want to put a prebiotic in that's just going to feed bacteria, right? Like a sugar-based prebiotic that's just feeding bacteria. I want to put something in that's going to feed bacteria, but is also going to have a functional benefit to the body. So I started looking at turkey tail because
Yeah.
I was in the forest, and it's like, oh, isn't this interesting? So many animals that come by and nibble on our turkey tail. Are animals that our dogs and cats would have been eating. right? So they're the prey that wolves and cougars and things like that would have been eating. So I thought, okay, well, that's cool because I believe that that's how they get the prebiotics predominantly in the wilds, the gut of the prey, the animal. So I did quite a long research on does turkey tail and chlorella actually is the other one that I used work as a prebiotic, and it's unbelievable. Like it's gone through so many rigorous tests, and it works unbelievably, and it has all of these other incredible qualities. So it's more something that would have been ancestral, right? That they would have been eating from the prey from a long time ago. So, rather than cows and chickens, it's closer to what their ancestral diet would have been.
Yeah.
So the lecture is going to be just more on my hypothesis and what I've seen working in the forest, what I've seen with wild, like with wolves, with growing up on a farm and having collie shepherd crosses living till they're 17 years old, and never even seeing a vet unless it broke a leg or had need a stitch or,
Yeah.
some
People are
kind
surprised when I tell them,
of,
back in the day, my dogs, we just, it was just so different back then.
yeah,
And we have to look back in history to try to figure out how to move forward. And we have to go
yeah,
backwards sometimes to go forward. But one of the things that you said is you said it better than I have been thinking it. And I see it all the time where people want to buy a product because it's quick and easy, but they don't really understand all of what needs to come along with that product. You can't just pull a product off the shelf, then you go home and then you give it and then you're upset because it didn't work. And it didn't work because you didn't fully understand. So, for example, if we look at like Yeasty Beast, right? The first thing you tell people, number one, first thing, you have to change the diet. But sometimes people look at that and think, "Oh, I just have to change the diet. Okay, I'll go change it from Purina to Science Diet." They don't completely understand what that means. And so then the product
mhm,
doesn't work. And then, they may have bought it online and then they come to me and they're like, "Oh, I tried that product. It didn't work." And I have to sit down and really have them understand. I had one client use it, and guess what she was doing while she was using that product? She was having the animal go through a deworming at the same time, the exact same time. She was giving that
mhm,
product. The animal had tapeworm, so she starts getting the dewormer from the vet. At the same time, she's trying to heal the gut. She's killing the gut.
yeah,
And that's why, um, when I started putting together the Thriving Pet Expo and getting more involved in educating people, is I see these wonderful products out there. And then you see people go, "Oh, I tried it, didn't work." It's because they're not taking the time to fully understand the ecosystem of the gut or the ecosystem of the skin. And that's what I love about you coming out and talking about it. It's not just, "Here, let me sell you a product." It's, "Let me let you understand the energy, the all that needs to take place in order for it to work, in order for food to work," right? People get so
mhm,
frustrated. I started feeding my dog raw and it didn't work. That's because you don't fully have an understanding of what you're doing and why you're
mhm.
doing it. And that's why it won't work.
Yeah,
So,
and I also think, even from like the product perspective, I didn't start out in this career making products. I started out as a vet hospital, right, to
right.
help animals. And, as I evolved and, wound up from going from one tiny little clinic to five, um, I worked with a lot of animals with these formulas that I created in practice based on necessity, based on a gap, right? It wasn't like, okay, I'm making these products because I
I
read that
want to
this
make money and I want
I,
to sell
I,
something.
I read this formula and it's good and whatever. I
Yeah.
made these products out of necessity to try and heal animals, right? And try and
Yeah.
deal with that gap of, what's going on here? Why does this vicious circle keep happening and
Yeah.
whatever? So when I sold my practices and decided to do ABA, a drug abuse apothecary, it was to try and more educate, right? Educate and be able to provide something to places that didn't even have holistic vets, that don't have holistic vets. Like, someone wants to try and do something, is to educate them and then provide them with stuff that actually I know works, right?
Yeah.
Works in my practice, because that's what I used. So, sure, we did all the diagnostics and we were able to, narrow everything down and be really specific. But that's why the products are so specific, is because they were narrowed down through thousands of animals. So, but I think that disconnect that I'm talking about too is that, we like, Google is awesome, but you Google and everything is like vitamin this for this and vitamin that for that and vitamin this for this and this is for that and this is for this and this is for that. And we're kind of missing the mark, because for me, you know, holistic medicine isn't so compartmentalized.
Right.
It's a high level understanding of how the body synergistically works together as a team, as a whole system. And
Yeah.
when we take it and we only look at the gut, or we only look at the pancreas, or we only look at the brain, or we only look at the joints, or we only look at whatever, we're kind of like, okay, we're chopping them up and we're saying we're holistic, but we're kind of like putting them, pigeonholing them in like conventional medicine.
Exactly.
So I try to, and the best teacher in the world is Mother Nature, because that's where we're getting it all from,
Yep.
right? Like, these plants wouldn't be working if they weren't working in nature, and they didn't have a function in nature. So you would think, okay, well, what does this plant do in nature? It all has its role. They all have their role in nature, right? So it's been a long process, and that's what I'm going to go over, is what I've seen and what I've, even as a kid, like, my grandma would plant chamomile in amongst, like, companion plant, and one of her favorite companion plants was chamomile, with vegetables, with everything. And this was way before we knew that plants had intelligence, and all of plant intelligence and stuff. And she used to say that she plants them there because if they're stressed, they calm them down, right? That chamomile calms the plants and brings this sort of like peace amongst this plant. Well, I never knew that chamomile. I never really knew what chamomile even did,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So it's
so
like,
interesting.
when you think about that, and like, this is this Yugoslavian woman that probably her great 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 grandmother told her that, right? So
Yeah.
it's it's stuff that we've been using, that we've gotten away from through sterilization, right? Through instant companion planning. What's that? We draw rows and rows and rows and rows of corn, and rows and rows and rows and rows of wheat, and rows and rows and rows and rows of pine trees, and rows and rows and rows. We are monocultured through the yin yang, and we are missing the point completely, that everything's a community. Like, everything's a community. Healers are communities. Like, and veterinarians fall into that healers category, right? So why are we so compartmentalized and separated? Well, plants should be the same way, and in my opinion, so should formulas. So I've always based my formulas on not supersizing, right? It's not like, oh, there's 70 million milligrams of this and 300,000 milligrams of this and this. I'm over exaggerating, I know. But my point is that for me, when I formulated, it was like, I'm going to formulate for this outcome. But what creates this outcome? Not one organ. All of these organs have to work synergistically and together as a team in order for me to get this outcome that I want. So when I was learning how to formulate and trying different formulations, and staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out what works with what, these formulas became very gentle amounts of each thing that works together, as a like, almost like as a natural formula would, to bring homeostasis back to the body. Because I never went was, oh, we just have to treat the liver, or we just have to treat the kidneys, or we just have to treat the pancreas. It's like they all work together.
Right.
They're buddies, man. Like they're like, oh, really? That's starting to fail? Like how many times do you see one organ failing and then all of a sudden the other organ fails? Well,
Of course.
because they all go into overdrive, right? To try and like catch up,
Yeah.
or support. So why wait till the other ones crash? Why not support them? It's like when I started doing the one product that I do for joints, that was for torn cruciate ligaments. That came out for torn cruciate ligaments because it's like, all right, if I'm going to do something with this ligament, it's not just the ligament I have to heal. I have to support the synovial fluid. I have to support the the periosteum. I have to support. I have to look at this and go, what's in this joint, including this ligament and tendon and cartilage, that all has to be meticulously supported in order to heal this ligament. So it's not just a joint formula. It's a muscular skeletal support system in a way.
Yeah.
So it's that understanding and digging in, and that's one thing I encourage pet parents to do is dig in and get the nitty gritty details. I'm not saying go and read all the research data, right? That's not what I'm talking about. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a veterinarian. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a physicist. You don't have to be anything. You just have to kind of go, all right, how do the dots connect? That's simple. How do we go from here to here, and what happens when it breaks? So if it breaks, why does it break? How come it's breaking? So if we know why it's breaking, then we're going to know why we're going to fix it, or
Yeah.
how we're going to fix it. But if we don't know the root cause, or we're not looking at why did it break in the first place, and then what do we do to support the body's ability to bring it back into balance, we're missing the point. We're really missing the point, and that makes me sad. It's like when you go to a grocery store, and I'm not saying be a vegan or be a vegetarian. That's not for anybody out there. That's not what I'm saying. But it makes me sad when you say to a child, or you say to even a teenager, they look at a steak, or they look at a chicken leg, more a steak because it's cut like that. They don't even put two to two together that it's coming from a cow.
No.
Right? Like we haven't said, you're going to buy this steak and you need to, thank or whatever that cow for giving you food, right? We don't learn anything like that. And that's my biggest movement in the holistic field right now, is to bring awareness to what Mother Nature is doing for us, because it's one of the biggest growing industries in the world, right? Natural supplements in holistic medicine.
Yeah.
And not very many people talk about, where is it coming from? How are we getting it? How are we supporting nature when we purchase this herb or this whatever? Where is this actually coming from? Like you would say, where is this coming from? People wouldn't even know. Where do you
Right.
think it came from? I don't know.
A warehouse.
How much carbon footprint did it get to come here? To
Yeah.
get into your mouth or your animal's mouth? What had to fail? What had to suffer? What had to, what are we it might be less expensive to bring it overseas in order to be able to feed it, but it's not less expensive for the planet. It's more expensive to our planet,
Right.
so it's making conscious decisions, because if we want to keep healing from nature, then to me it's not rocket science to be like, then we need to support nature,
Yeah.
right? Like,
No, we
so
do.
that's what the talk. That's a big long rampage.
It's a big long rant.
um,
I just want to say that a while back, I still do. I work with a lot of animals with yeast problems, and it's one of my favorite things to work. And before I ever even met you, because you were talking about filling a gap, And before I ever even met you, which I've talked about many times, I saw Julianne speak in Chicago many years ago, and it was the most powerful speech I have probably ever heard. And you're talking to somebody who was on the speech team in college and competed for 4 years against highly competitive people. And it was just this amazing speech. But before I ever met you that day in Chicago, I needed a product to help me. I was at that point, I was sending people, if you've ever used Yeasty Beast, you'll know that it has three products in one box. And before I met you, I had to tell people, go get this, go get that, and go get this, and do it all exactly like I'm telling you to do. And you know what would happen? People wouldn't do any of it because it was too much work. They were like, "Oh, okay." I only knew what I knew back then, and so I was like, "Go get some apple cider vinegar." Like I was trying to put this all together to try to heal the gut and get the yeast out,
Yeah.
but nobody would do it. And then I thought, well, maybe I just need to bring all that stuff in here. And then I met you, and it was like, oh my God, finally somebody filled that gap where it's just in one little box. And if you follow all of the instructions, you'll notice if you look on here, so many people have said that your product has worked for them. Um, One person has a shop where she sells your product, and she's getting, those are the best to me, and why I support stuff, because you're getting it, people who have, coming to me saying it worked, or you see it work, and it's not just your animal. That's why I love it so much. But I love that you created this product not to become a salesperson, but to fill that gap and that necessity for these animals, because a lot of times it does come down to convenience. And when you can't get the product and you find yourself buying 12 different products to solve one issue, the animal ends up suffering.
It's overwhelming, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah,
It's overwhelming for people to try and navigate by themselves. Find and not only going to buy each, and like, I mean, I know with leaky gut, like even just in our gut soothe, to go and buy all of the things, you have to have like 36 things on your counter, right?
yeah,
And it's like, out of all those 36 things, they've been narrowed down impeccably to it being not just organic, and not just professional grade for people, like none of it's pet grade.
right.
But where did it come from? We have someone that works for us in California. That's all she does, is she just sources. And every year we might have a great supplier, and she'll find someone that is even you know saving water more, or doing something even bigger environmentally, so that it's a much better ingredient from a perspective of how we're giving back to nature, right? So it's to run around and find 36 things that are sourced really well, and you can you know sit back and be sure that it's environmentally friendly, and it's not just greenwashed and things like that. Like, it's yeah, I'm terrible at sales. I could never sell. It's not it's super not my forte. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
thing that I do with ABA is continue to formulate, continue to research. I mean, I know that I'm in my fourth year at Dalhousie University with canine cancer
Oh,
research.
awesome.
So, and I'm researching probiotics all the time, and prebiotics, and researching medicinal mushrooms. And so I'm not from a sales, I don't even know what's going on when it comes to that. I have
Yeah.
an amazing business partner that organizes all that. I'm just still really, like, I have a big rescue here, right? So I'm really in that, I'm still in that space where I'm seeing what's failing, right? Which is really good. It's really
Yeah.
hard, because I'm getting all the ones that are going to be euthanized, and all the ones that people have had to give up on because they don't have any more money or whatever. So I'm able to continue to see and progress about, what are we still seeing? Where is that? Where's this gap needing? Like, holistic medicine's right out there. It's right in our face. Supplements are out there. Everything is, you know, gut gut health is out there. but we're still seeing really sick animals. So for me, I just needed to get into that space about, all right, I feel like I need to go back in time, and just try and really dig into what's going on with that.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's just so, I'm just so happy and so thankful that you continue to do so much research and that you're so willing to share the research with us and get it out there and communicate, because without it, you end up like, been doing 30 products and trying to get the right dosage, and you just end up, people just, it's overwhelming. And
it is
so,
overwhelming.
trying to get it back down to where it needs to be. And it shouldn't be this difficult. It should be a lot more simple. And
No,
so I'm just really excited. But one question, and then I'm going to let you go because it's 6 o'clock and Julianne's in Nova Scotia. So what time is it there?
10.
It's 10 o'clock. So we have to let her go. But somebody did ask, do you do consultations, like private consultations? No.
No,
All
no,
right.
I refer to all the great vets and stuff that are on the conference,
Yeah.
and also to a good friend and colleague of mine, Andrea Ring. She's really great. Uh she's in Vancouver, and she's a phenomenal homeopath. She's really, really, really good. So I'll refer to her, or it depends. I'm just too. I gave up. I gave that up when I moved out here. I haven't actually treated an animal for 10 years since I'll work with vets. Like if I right now I maybe have 15 patients on the go, but vicariously through veterinarians.
Okay.
So a vet will call, and I like doing that because the vets really learn a lot,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like
That's what we need.
I'm supporting the vet, and then the vet learns and has this hopefully awesome experience that then they have more confidence, right? Because I think that's the other thing with vets, that just to give
Absolutely.
vets a little bit more of a support here. Like, they don't have the time to experiment with holistic medicine,
Right.
right? And they do what they know that works. And I feel like they just need the support to have 4 or 5 cases that just blows their mind,
Yep.
and then they're going to be like, oh wow, holy man, okay,
It
there's something
works.
to
And
this,
nobody
or
died. I agree. They're
you
just,
know
they're scared, and
and so they should be, in a way. you
yeah,
know I
you
feel
don't
like I
you don't
feel
want
like
someone doing something that, I mean, imagine just getting your hair cut, someone coming at you who's scared to death to cut your hair with a pair of scissors. Like, it's not a good it's not good. You want them
yeah,
to be confident. You want them to feel like, if I do, plus if they're coming at you like that, go back to the hairdresser analogy. You're not getting a good haircut. Like,
no, and
they're
then
shaking.
they also have, their association breathing down their
Yeah.
necks about stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the more vets that I can help,
Yes.
that's where my forte is right now.
Good.
If I'm gonna take the time to try and help something, hopefully it's going to make a much larger ripple in the ocean than
Well,
than
that's what we had the big meeting this morning about the Thriving Pet Expo, and that's what we talked about, is that we learned from last year's event that we did a great job. All the speakers did a great job of educating, but after I realized, I think we're missing something, and I had to sit with myself for a while. What are we missing? What are we missing? And what we're missing is teaching people how to communicate with their veterinarians in order to help the veterinarian. Because if we can help that veterinarian, then they're going to help so many more patients. And
Yep.
so it's really about, how are we going to do that? So we're doing some really cool things this year that are going to be fun and engaging with the people that are coming, the guests, learning how to present this to your conventional vet. And so it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're super excited about that part of it, because I think you're right. Without the vets, and getting them there, I always tell people I buy books a lot and then I give them to conventional veterinarians. I just gave one. not sure if I'm going to hear from her. I just put it in a little gift bag and gave it to her. It's been a little over a week, so I'm guessing I'm not going to hear anything, but that's okay. Maybe one day when she's in the right mind frame, she might open that book and read it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I have to do something, and so we're going to be planting these seeds, as we like to say, at this convention. We're going to be really planting a lot of seeds, and we really want the guests to know that they're part of this movement. Which this movement is really not about just teaching you, but teaching everyone and learning
Yep.
what you can learn, and bringing everybody into this movement. So, like you say, we're about to crack, and we're right at the right time to move in, right? That we're at
Yeah.
its breaking point, and we need to get into this little situation right now and get there. And I'm just so very excited about it. I'm so glad. I said this morning, for everybody who's listening, we had this huge meeting this morning about the Thriving Pet Expo with all of the wonderful vendors that are going to be there, and the speakers, and everybody that's going to be there, and the two crazy cat ladies. And we were talking, and I said, God, I feel like, I don't know if you were on yet, Julianne, but I said, I feel like I just put together the 2016 women's gymnastics team, because it just was like this. And then Dr. Suter says, yeah, I'm going to learn how to do the splits. So, but I feel like we have this just amazing team that is just unstoppable in our quest to help these animals in such a
Yeah.
broader way, in such a
Well, I
broader way.
was think after that we were thinking like brainstorming like what can we give to really help, and you know how I have um like have on YouTube I have these courses called Are You Vet Ready?
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And so I was saying to Mariana, maybe we should put a book together. Like maybe I should take it and bring it together, and everybody that comes to the conference actually can go home
Oh
with
yeah.
with an actual book
That's
called
a
Are You Vet Ready?
Oh,
Right?
that is
With
amazing.
a
If I can
well,
help you in any way put
yeah,
that together, let me know. Reach out to me and Lori if I can help in any way.
yeah.
Having that, something like that, because that's really what this is. If we keep isolating our veterinarians, right, by getting mad and getting frustrated,
No, it doesn't
we're,
work.
we're not even helping ourselves, let alone
No,
helping the entire animal community. So
no,
I'm
not
just
at all.
excited. So, all right, guys, I am gonna. We have got to let her get some sleep. She's got an entire bunch of animals she needs to attend to, and so we're gonna let Julianne get some sleep. But thank you so very much for
Thank
being here
you.
and
Thank you
talking.
for all what you're doing too. That's amazing.
Oh, it's gonna be. You guys are gonna be
And you do.
great.
You've got some pretty powerful women behind you. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel bad because we're leaving Billy Hookman out of that,
Oh,
but
well, Billy's used
we
to
do
it.
have
Billy
Billy.
knows.
We do have Billy who's going to be speaking, but he wasn't on today, so I felt
Yeah,
comfortable. I felt like I had the women's gymnastics team with me.
it's
Uh,
great.
and Billy,
He can
Billy,
be he can be the coach.
the coach, yeah. So we have Billy coaching us, yeah, yeah. So it was just a lot of fun. So, all
So
right,
Billy Hopeman will be Billy Coachman.
Billy Coachman, we'll call him that from now on. Billy Coachman.
Okay.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. We will see
See
you
you
soon.
later.
Take care, everybody. Good night. Good
Thanks.
night.
Good night.